Good afternoon. Welcome to Knittings and Sewings. This is episode 35. I am Shelley, coming to you from the Kansas City area. And this afternoon, I want to welcome all of you who are new here to my podcast, and welcome back to those who are continuing viewers. I really appreciate everyone watching as I talk about not only my knittings and sewings, but also weaving, spinning, sometimes fiber dyeing, whatever else I get up to. Today I want to update you on a project I talked about in the last episode. I hadn't yet started it at that point. We were getting ready to start a pre-ski knit-along with Katie Jones, and she's part of the Hobie website. She's a designer that is in collaboration with them throughout this knit along and crochet along. Some people are knitting, some people are crocheting, but we're all making a very similar looking sweater. And it is a mystery knit along in 7 parts. Thus far, I have just completed the first 2 parts, and last Thursday we had the 3rd clue drop. So this is technically part 3, and I'm a little bit behind. I'm trying to do both the front and the back together, like many people are doing, and we will be mattress stitching eventually. But this is where I am, having completed the first 2 parts and getting ready to start my 3rd. And as you can see, I have done it on 2 different needles, so that by the end of this is a very loose fitting pullover top, pullover sweater, and it has obviously a very vintage, wild colors, 1980s kind of vibe. And so next up, I'm going to be starting on part 3 today. So I wanted to show you part 2 completed before I go into part 3. One thing I do know that is coming up and is causing me a little bit of trepidation is that in part 3, we are going to be adding, in the middle of that part 3, there are going to be some diamonds, and in the midst of the diamonds, in mint green, there's going to be some baubles in blue. So the blue part that I have down here and up at the top here, this midnight blue, we're going to be having baubles. And the concern is, this is supposed to be like a 27-inch, I don't know how many centimeters that is, but I'll put that up here when I calculate the centimeters. It's supposed to be on my size too. It's going to be a total of 27 inches from the bottom to the top of the sweater. And so after we complete part 3, we're supposed to have one more part, part 4. Katie says, we'll complete that front and back part of the sweater, and then we'll be moving on to other things. I guess my guess would be the sleeves and some other embellishments, or possibly mattress stitching the 2 sides together. I don't know, but I do know that when we get to part 3, in the middle of the mint diamond section, we're going to be having some baubles. And from what many of us are calculating, including my friend Carolyn, she did some pretty elaborate calculations. We believe that the bauble area may be right at the midpoint of the boob area. So we're a little bit concerned of how that will look. But I'm still trying to make my decision on whether I'm going to proceed with baubles, or if I just make plain diamonds. Or Carolyn has opted, she's a little bit ahead of me, she has opted to put in a single stitch there in the midst of the diamond. So it's like a running single stitch that's a little bit more subtle than what the baubles will be. But by next time when we have another episode, hopefully I will have made that decision, and I'll show you what I decided to do. Next up, I wanted to talk about a book that I've been reading, and it's actually a reread. It's one of those books you like so well that you decide to give it a second read, and that's rare for me. Usually I just read a book once. But this book that I'm going to recommend anybody who likes a cozy historical mystery, this is called The Cabinets of Barnaby Mayne by Elsa Hart. And this book is actually written by a St. Louis author, so she's not far from my area. And anyway, this was written a few years ago, back at the end of the pandemic. But it very much appealed to me when I read it maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago, because what it's about, the Cabinets of Barnaby Mayne. Back in the 1700s, early 1700s, wealthy men often collected, they made collections of the natural world, of all different kinds of things. It could be shells, it could be, rocks, it could be plants, it could be little skeletal creatures, it could be any number of things. They would collect, and some of them would have whole roomfuls of collections, and some would just be, cabinets. They called them cabinets of curiosity. And so I was drawn to this book, partly for a personal reason, because when I was a child, I used to always have a rock collection. And I don't know if you ever collected anything, but having a collection is really fun. I wish I still had my old rock collection. But unfortunately, I think it was lost amidst several moves in my childhood. But at any rate, this book is about Cecily Kay, a woman who has a fascination with plants. She's always studied plants and herbs, and is kind of a professional academic collector of these things. And she wants to go to this Cabinet of Curiosities gathering of primarily wealthy men, but there's also another woman in this story who is a childhood friend of hers she didn't know would be there, named Macon Barlow, who's now married, and she didn't recognize her married name, but she's there to do the cataloging for this Barnaby Mayne. He's an older gentleman who's probably getting ready to sell part or all of his collection, and so he's invited all of these people, rich, wealthy people from all over the world, to come and tour his collection, and again having this Macon do some cataloging of the collection, and allowing Cecily the chance to also complete some of her botanical studies by studying his collection before the collection is dispersed. So there's a whole house full of people in this house, and taking a tour of the collection. And during the process of this event, of course, someone is murdered. And so I won't go into any more details about that, because that's part of the fun of the cozy mystery. But it's very much a period piece. It's set in one timeline. Some of the novels nowadays are set in dual timelines, but this is in one timeline, 1703. And I just very much enjoyed feeling like I was stepping back into that period where many scientific discoveries were being made. Linnaeus was famously making his classifications of the plant and animal world, and so this was all during that period. And part of the fascination in doing these collections was to become kind of venturing into a scientific exploration for each person that was a collector. So I love that whole concept, and very much enjoyed this story. And it's more than just solving the mystery. It's a matter of feeling like you're immersing yourself in that time period, in England, and 1703, when Queen Anne was queen. And just putting yourself back in that time period was a real pleasure for me. One thing that I'm doing right now, getting ready to do, as part of that rereading of the Cabinets of Curiosity of Barnaby Mayne, is a couple of years ago when I first read the book, I bought this fabric, which is the Cabinet of Curiosity fabric that I was able to buy online from Spoonflower. They have a lot of unique prints that you can purchase. And so I did buy this fabric with the intent of making a knitting bag with it. And so just here recently, I was telling my friend Carolyn about that, because she's been in a process of sewing several knitting bags. And so I decided to get this fabric out, and she helped me cut it out and figure out if I had enough fabric, since I'd pre-purchased that fabric, if I had enough fabric to make the larger bag that she was making. And I did. We managed to eke out, just barely, enough of the cutouts for this. And so I am going to put a link down below of the pattern that I'm using. And hopefully soon, maybe in the next week or so, I'll have this bag knit up. So this is the one I've made for the first sewing effort here is the McCalls 8052. This actually used to be called another number, but McCalls has revamped their numbering system. So if you think you bought this pattern before, you may very well have, but they renumbered everything. But this is there are different views. You can make it as a long duster vest, or you can make it short sleeved, or you can make it long sleeved. Each version has a very generous shawl collar, and you want to make it with the intention of using fabric that the right side is on most of it, but you've got a little bit of the wrong side showing on the shawl collar. So it has to be fabric that you don't mind showing the wrong side of. And how this came about was I decided to, one day I was at Joann Fabric trying to buy some fabric and some other things, and I happened where they have the Husqvarna and Viking sewing station within Joann store. I saw a lady there working there, and she was working on a project obviously by herself on a Sunday afternoon. And so I stopped and talked to her briefly, and I asked her, do you ever have sewing classes? Because I knew that a sewing class would not only help me build my skills, but would help motivate me to get something done with the class. So she said, well, yes, we have a sweater class coming up in a couple of weeks, and it was this sewing pattern. And so I got very excited. So for $25 I could sign up for this class, and I did, and I was so excited. Could not wait to do the class. And within a span of 4 hours, from 12:30 to 4:30 on a Sunday, we were going to sew up this whole sweater. It's a very easy sweater. It only has maybe 3 or 4 seams. And the challenge with it is you are working with stretchy fabric, knitted fabric. So that is the challenge, both in cutting the pattern pieces as well as, working with it. And that was the real skill builder for me, in addition to, once again, reviewing how to properly cut out pattern pieces and line up everything with a straight of grain and lay out your fabric to the best advantage with the pattern pieces that you have. And so I did all that, and I used one of their machines, and so I had a chance to practice using their machine. We got everything finished except the hemming, which was done later. We were to take that home. And I know that in the class that she had on Tuesday, a few days before my class, she had 7 people in that class, because a lot of the people, that take the classes are taking it during the daytime on the weekday. So in that class, they had 7 people, and I don't know if they got as far as I did. Many of them used sergers, because one thing with knit fabric, it's easier in some ways to use a serger. And I don't have a serger. I want to get one, but I don't have one. So I decided to go ahead and just make it with a regular sewing machine, so that I will know how to do it when I get home. And so one thing I will say is, if you do decide that you like the look of my sweater and you'd like to make one, keep one thing in mind that's very important. This is a very oversized sweater. It's very ample, gives you a lot of room. I'm normally a size extra large. I have a 42-inch chest, and I'm not ever a small anymore. But in this pattern, I took a small. She had us try on her garment that she made, which was a small. And it did fit me, and it fit most of the people in the class where there have been 7 people. Most of them made either a small or extra small, or at most a medium. So you do want to be aware that because it's this stretchy fabric, it's very forgiving of your curves. So if you make especially if you're shorter like I am, I'm 5'3", if you make the large one, you will end up with it practically halfway down your calf. Right now, with mine, it goes to about 2 or 3 inches above my knee. So it's a good length for me. It's very comfortable. I just love it. At first I was not sure how it would turn out, and there were a few hiccups. At one point I accidentally sewed the shawl collar shut, And so we had to trim the shawl collar, but that was just a mishap. And I will say that if you take a class at Joann, because you're taking a class with the Husqvarna Viking group within the store itself, you have a lot of people stopping by asking questions, asking for information about the sewing machines. And so if you are going to be in one of these classes, you have to be aware that you're going to be interrupted. And so anyway, but I did finish the class in a little less than 4 hours, and I had everything finished by the end except for my hem, which I was able to do that evening. I'd say it took me about an hour maybe to do all the hems. And what she had me use was this Heat and Bond soft stretch light. She told me exactly what to use, because if you're using stretchy material, you don't want to use regular bonding material, or it isn't as flexible. So this is what you need if you do decide to make anything out of knit fabric, I guess, to do your hems. So that is about it. I really love this. I'm going to probably be making more of these. I just looked for the sweater fabric there, and I got it on sale for half price. The day I happened to buy it, I used a sale. It was on sale that day for 50% off. Even if it's not on sale, you can use a Joann coupon and more than likely get quite a bit off. So I really like this sweater. I'm happy with it, and I wanted to share it with you as one of my first sewing successes. Since I showed you my failure a few weeks ago, I wanted to show you that sometimes things do turn out well, and then it makes sewing all worthwhile. This is the time of year when very often the magazines such as Spin-Off and Little Looms and a lot of the different long thread media magazines I subscribe to have some excellent issues, because obviously fall is the natural time to focus on getting back into spinning and weaving and all of those things. So I wanted to particularly point out this time an amazing issue. This was even better than usual. Spin-Off magazine, the fall 2024, features some excellent articles and projects on spindle spinning. And it goes into all the different types of spindles that you can use. On the cover are some spin cushions, little cushions that can be used with your hand spun yarn and then knitted into these little spin pillows that you can use them especially with supported spindles that are featured on the front cover. But they also talk about other things in here as well, other types of spindles if you're not fond of supported spindle. The particular spin cushions that are featured here were designed and written about by a Wichita spinner and knitter, and I think she goes by Prairie Spinning on Ravelry, but I'll put up her link to her pattern that she has on Ravelry, and it is free. But if you subscribe to Spin-Off, you can also look at it and read it more in depth in this magazine article, and I think you'll really enjoy it. But I enjoyed also, made me think about my own spindle spinning, and the fact that when I do spindle spinning, I really enjoy the process itself. Whereas when I'm on my spinning wheel or my e-wheels, I tend to have more of a production mentality and a focus on producing a certain kind of yarn for a certain kind of project. Well, with spindle spinning, it really, for me, is a process that gets me in a mindfulness mode that I really need to be in to help me calm down and just get within the pure joy of spinning and feeling the fiber as it, works with my spindle, the tool of whatever spindle I'm using. And so this article or this whole magazine caused me to get out my autumnal type fiber that I had in my stash, and to sit down over my lunch hour a couple of times and start, not only reading the article. I spent one whole lunch hour just reading the magazine, but then I also dug out, like this is my Turkish spindle, And I like it because the arms, after you spin what's called a cop of fiber on here, and I have barely started this, but once the fiber is a ball on here, you wind it on with the legs, and then you can pull the legs out and come up with a a ball that you can ply on either end. So a center pull ball. So yeah, this is a really nice handy way of doing that. And the yarn attaches up here and has a little place at the top that you can attach the yarn, and so you can easily keep a hold of this. It is a kind that you spin and let it fly in the air, but it's still one of my favorite ways if I use that type of spindle. And my very favorite, I love to do supported spindle, and it has a spindle bowl. And so that's with the spin cushion. If you had a smaller bowl, you could rest it on, well, even with this one, you could rest it on the spin cushion, and it would really fit nicely in your lap for some comfortable spinning. And finally, one of my favorite spindles is one that Robin Godey, I think he's in Illinois, but he comes to the Missouri Fiber Festivals a lot. And this is also a type of supported spindle. And this is either called a stone or a bone. You remove it after you get your fiber on here, get your yarn on here, and wind it around on this. Then you can take this bone or stone, I forget which it's called, you can put it right on your Lazy Kate and ply like I have 3 bones, so I can take 2 of the bones and ply them on, or 3, whatever I want to do. But I can then go to the next bone and fill it. But once I get 2 or 3 together and want to apply it, then I just love the way they fit right on my Lazy Kate. And I can then go to ply them on my spinning wheel, which is the way I prefer to do my plying. Some people ply on the spindle, and you certainly can do that. But for me, at that point, I like to just, ply them on my spinning wheel. So I wanted to bring up that particular issue because I think it's excellent, and whether you already do spindle spinning or have thought about getting into it, that's a good way to enter into spinning. A good portable and low cost, and just a good relaxing way to get into spinning. I also want to mention Little Looms magazine. This is one of my favorite of the Long Thread Media magazines. And it sounds like sometimes I'm plugging Long Thread, but I have no affiliation with them. I just really enjoy the magazines and the courses they have too online. But Little Looms was particularly good this time also. It had the fall issue featuring a vest made by Judith Shangold. And I'll show you, if I can, a picture of this vest. But it's made on a rigid heddle loom. It's kind of hard to see this picture. It's made on a rigid heddle loom. And you only need like a 12 or 12.5 inch width, weaving width. So it can be a pretty small loom. I have a Kromsky Presto loom that's 16 inches, and I could do that vest on that loom even. It doesn't have to be even a wide rigid heddle. In the second issue that I just got the other day, the winter issue, she continues the vest discussion and telling you how to attach the way that you can take a narrow width like that and turn it into a full garment is by adding knitting to the sides. And in this case, she has a panel of lace down the middle and then also has the sides knitted. And she tells you how to pick up and knit to make that vest. So if you're into rigid heddle weaving, you want to try your hand at making a nice vest for fall or winter, then this would be certainly good. She had written a book years ago, back in 2015. I've been following Judith for years, and she had originally created some individual projects and then eventually put this book out called Weave, Knit, Wear. And it's no longer available, I don't believe. It had just a short print run, and it's very, very popular. But I love this book, and if you ever get a copy or can find one, grab it. Or maybe you can find it at the library to take a look at. This will tell a lot of the techniques she uses to create these wonderful garments out of your narrow width. So anyway, that is really inspiring for me to read these magazines, and hopefully it'll inspire you too. I normally am not into yarn acquisition, but I have done really well the last few years on whittling down my stash to almost nothing. So I have a lot of stash fiber. That is not whittled down yet, unfortunately. I have plenty of that, but I do have, you know, an opportunity here to get some Halloween yarn from Hobie. They had a sale, and so this is Halloween sock wool, and it's pretty generous, like 435 yards. So I picked 2 colors. I don't know the color names of these, and I can't read them with my glasses. I already tried, but can't read what the names are, but I will put it down in the show notes. And there are, you know, they sell out of these fairly quickly, so if you do want to pick up some Halloween yarn, they still have some available, at least at the time of this recording. And they also are starting to get in some Christmas sock yarn. So I love this Christmas sock wool glitter, and I picked up one of those as well. I really would like to make a pair of Christmas socks this year if I possibly can. I may or may not have time to get to the Halloween ones, but these I would like to do as a nice little gift to myself, because it has been a while since I've had a Christmas pair of socks. Well, it's time to wrap things up. Walter is getting really tired. I'm recording this after work, and it's kind of like getting late, and so he's getting tired already. But I wanted to say, as I always do, love what you're making and wear what you make. Till next time, goodbye everybody.